You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Haristadoulou.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to more of the Greeks Gridiron. I'm Ethan Haristadoulou, and today, as we do every Tuesday, power rankings time for all 32 teams in the NFL, going from worst to first, talking about each and every single team and where I have them listed on the big board. So make sure you hit that like button, subscribe button, and comment down below. What am I getting right? What am I getting wrong? Let me know where you would rank these teams. I'd love to see a list from you guys as well. But before we get going, question of the day for you all. I would like to ask your all's opinion. Who do you think is going to be the NFL's MVP come season end? Remember, playoffs do not matter. The voting takes place prior to the playoffs. So who do you think ends up being the MVP of this year's NFL season? You have guys like Jalen Hurts. You have, obviously, there's a strong consideration at this point now for Joe Burrow. You're looking at Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. Those are just a handful of the guys to name a few. Someone like Justin Jefferson, who's on a record pace in receiving yards, might even get a little bit of consideration. Feels like a quarterback award, obviously, but I would love to hear some ideas from you guys. Who do you think comes out with that coveted NFL MVP award? But without further ado, we're going to dive right into this list here, starting with the bottom four teams in the NFL. From 32 to 29, we have the Broncos at 32, sitting at the very bottom. We'll talk about that in a second. The Texans at 31, Bears at 30, and then the Colts at number 29. So why do we have Denver at number 32? Because that team is an absolute train wreck right now on offense, in the coaching, at the quarterback position. It is just a disaster, and it pains me to say it because I love the defense they have over there in Denver. I've been saying it for the last 2 years. A championship caliber unit that has just kind of gone wasted away, whether it be by coaching, poor quarterback play, or just like the offense not really holding up its end of the bargain. You saw the infighting going on the sideline as they were getting completely blown out by the Rams, and it's just a really, I guess you could say, disappointing end to what was a lot of people looking at as a potentially Super Bowl type of season for this team. So unfortunate for the Broncos, but after seeing what I saw from them on Christmas Day, they sit at the bottom for me right now. The Texans right above them at 31 just got a win over the division rival Titans, although a hobbled division rival Titans. They still got a win nonetheless, and at least have been in it with some really good teams the last few weeks. The Denver, it just kind of feels like they've rolled over at this point, and it's just a really unfortunate thing to watch. Bears are sitting at number 30. I believe their losing streak is at like 8 or something like that right now. I think it's the longest losing streak in the NFL, and another team that just, it's like on the opposite side of things. You have Justin Fields that's doing everything he can to try to keep this team together and keep them fighting for wins, and ultimately, whether it's the defense that eventually folds or just the offensive weapons around him not quite holding up their end of the bargain, just a tough way for this team to kind of finish off the season. And, you know, despite the fact that they got blown out, I believe it was, 35-13 or something like that to the Bills, that score actually made the game look a little bit wider than it was, because it was closer. I mean, the Bears were leading at halftime. It was a little bit closer than the score would show you, but things kind of got out of hand at the end of the game. And ultimately, just, again, another team that's in a really tough way right now, and hopefully they can get some playmakers, and, rounds 1 and 2, you find some guys that you can just kind of throw into that lineup and are impact players from day one going into next season. And then the Colts at number 29, losing 20-3 to the Chargers last night. Another team that is just kind of walking its way to the end of the season here, or hobbling, I guess you could say. 5 straight losses at this point now after winning that debut for Jeff Saturday as their head coach. And again, another team that just needs an overhaul. They really do. They need a new head coach. I don't think Jeff Saturday is going to be the guy. I really hope they look for someone else. No offense to Jeff Saturday, one of my favorite centers of all time, growing up a Colts fan, but I've got to say, man, this has been an ugly and disastrous end. And, I remember everyone was kind of high and mighty over the Colts beating the Raiders there, and I can't believe the Raiders dropped that game, but I did not really expect that to last. I feel like I've said that a few times since that, and again, they haven't won a game since, so they are where they are. Next four teams, we have the Arizona Cardinals at number 28, losing a tight loss 19-16 to the Buccaneers, a team that is obviously another one of those just kind of hurting and hobbling towards the end of the season with losing their starting quarterback. And I would assume at this point, Cliff Kingsbury's probably on his way out. It seems like there's going to be some change going on here. Maybe Kingsbury sticks around for another season, but the clear just discontent between him and Kyler Murray, I just don't really see how that results in a healthy relationship any further. So it seems like something has to give there, and I don't think it's going to be Kyler Murray at that point. The Raiders at 27, a team that just is so much worse. This is a weird way to say this because I feel like I've said it the other way more often than not. They are worse than the sum of their parts somehow, and it seems like it's time to move on from Derek Carr. I see some Raiders fans even shouting the same thing as well. You have so much talent in the skills positions between, like, you know, Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, Josh Jacobs, and then, of course, Darren Waller, the tight end. And yeah, the offensive line has been awesome in the ground game, hasn't been great in the passing game, and then the defense is hit or miss week in and week out. And the Raiders are just like, they're like the total opposite of what you see with like the Minnesota Vikings, a team that has 11 victories in one possession games. And then you have like the Raiders that feel like they have 11 losses at this point in one possession games. Just can't quite seem to finish teams off. And this is a head scratcher one for me. I understand that, you know, Josh McDaniels is the new head coach, second time around. And I definitely had my doubts about him going into the season, but just kind of a tragic end for a team that, again, another one that had a lot of hopes and dreams of, you know, being playoff bound. And I guess while they're still technically not eliminated, just does not really feel like they're going to be finding themselves into the playoffs, at least at this point right now. Falcons at number 26, working their way through the Desmond Ridder era right now. And, you know, it just feels like it's kind of the same story for like these bottom 8 teams here. Rams at 25, you know, these are the bottom teams of the NFL at this point here. We're looking at like 4 and 5 wins max for these teams that are listed out right here. At the very worst here, the Texans at 2 wins only. But this feels like the bottom group of teams. I've been shuffling these guys around for the last few weeks, and this is the bottom groups of the NFL. Hats off to the Rams, though, for looking like the Super Bowl contender they were last year against the Denver Broncos this week, although it was with Baker Mayfield at the helm and a bunch of who's who. You know, the Rams... Talk about a fall from grace, an absolute fall from grace. It's been a tough season to watch. At least, you know, Baker Mayfield and company gets to relish in what was the most dominant victory it felt like this season, just completely dismantling Denver. So there is a little bit of a positive for them, and hence why I have them at the top of the worst in the NFL. Next 4 teams, we're looking at the Cleveland Browns here. I really thought they could have gotten it done against the Saints, but just that offense it's clunky and it's just not quite working right now. Obviously, trying to knock all that, almost like, what was it, 700 days of rust off of Deshaun Watson still. And the running game is still the running game. You still have Nick Chubb. You still have Kareem Hunt. You still have some weapons over there. Amari Cooper. There are still things to like. Hopefully, Deshaun Watson can get closer back to his form, because right now, this offense is not looking like, I think, anything like what was expected of them with the return of Deshaun Watson. And you could almost argue that it was a better group with Jacoby Brissett as the starting quarterback, and that's kind of scary. Seahawks at number 23, another one of those teams that have just fallen from grace. I remember at one point I had them as high as, I believe, number 7 on this list here, and I just cannot believe the complete 180 turnaround that they had. And again, the defense was kind of playing above their heads a little bit, but they were playing really, really well. They looked really good, and the offense was just firing on all cylinders. But Geno Smith has come back down to earth. We've seen some struggles here and there from this team, and I believe they've lost like 4 of their last 5 of their last 6, something like that. Because at one point it felt like this team was, 6-3. So a kind of a steep decline for this team to last like month and a half. Maybe they can sneak their way into the playoffs. They're going to need some help to do so, but it does not really feel like they're going to, in my opinion. Saints, 22, a team that seems to have some fight left in them, a defense that's solid when they're playing really well, and then an offense that just, for whatever reason, has had Andy Dalton starting the entire season. I don't really understand how that all happened and what the reasoning for all that was, because I really think that Jameis Winston is a more physically gifted quarterback, and for whatever reason, they've just stuck with Andy Dalton. I don't know if there's just lingering issues from the injury he suffered in his lower back earlier in the season. He was playing with like 4 fractured vertebrae, which is kind of unbelievable. And the fact that Jameis Winston has been considered healthy, but he's just been a scratch is also head scratching, I guess you could say. But the Saints are where they are. I don't really expect them to make the playoffs at this point in the season. While the door is open still, the NFC South. I know the Buccaneers have a little bit of a lead right now with it, but I mean the door is still open. There is still a realm of possibility, but it just kind of feels like this is a Saints team working their way towards the end of a season and probably missing the playoffs. The Panthers, I've got to say, I want to shout out the Panthers because I have caught a lot of flack for not putting the Detroit Lions in the top 10 of my power rankings all this season, especially on their recent run that they were going on. This Panthers team, despite losing Christian McCaffrey, despite getting rid of Robbie Anderson, losing their head coach, having Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, and PJ Walker all start for them, have been rattling off wins here and there since Steve Wilks has taken over. And this is a team that feels like come season end, you need strong consideration. And honestly, in my opinion, it should probably be something you do end up doing in keeping Steve Wilks as your head coach. This is a guy that clearly the players are buying in on. And I think it reminds me of like Rich Bisaccia from last season with the Raiders. The team is rallying around him. You're winning games when you probably shouldn't be, but they're still rallying around him and showing that you can win with this team. The ground game, when they're rolling here, and I know they're playing the Lions defense, not necessarily the best, but there's clearly something going on with them being around Steve Wilks, and you should be buying into that. I know that, they probably have some people in mind they want as head coach. I feel like the Sean Payton sweepstakes has been the talk of the town for the last few weeks, and it's kind of getting annoying because he still belongs to the Saints, and so ultimately it's up to them to kind of decide what the heck happens with him and how that works out. I don't really know where he ends up going, but it sounds like he does want to come back. I don't know if he's going to have any consideration for the Saints again, if the Saints are going to keep Dennis Allen. I don't know, but ultimately the Panthers are a team that they're like greater than the sum of their parts at this point right now, and I just want to say that they blowing the doors off the Lions made me feel a little vindicated in my feelings and reservations for the Lions. While I've been excited to watch them and I'm a big fan of Dan Campbell, losing to a team like the Panthers, not to knock the Panthers, but that is indicative that you are not a top 10 team in the NFL. At number 20, we're looking at the New York Jets, a team that is just kind of tragically ending their season in an awful way. At one point, 7-3. Feels like you're going to fight the Bills for the playoffs. Not the playoffs, for the AFC East title, and are now just staring down the barrel of, are we starting Mike White or are we starting Zach Wilson this week? And something's got to give with Zach Wilson at this point. It does not feel like this team wants him there anymore, player-wise. I don't know about coaching-wise, but player-wise, it seems like they're really buying into Mike White to the point where people are saying, like, hey, that's my quarterback, Mike White, not Zach Wilson. I don't know if Zach Wilson's in over his head in the NFL or not. I'm not going to sit here and act like I know the answer to that. I'll let you guys decide that in the comments down below. Feel free to throw something in on that if you'd like to, but I love the Jets defense. I really do. They are one of the most effective teams at rushing the quarterback with only 4 people. And it's just, again, another one of those teams with such a great defense that is unfortunately being wasted because of just like incompetence on the offensive side of the ball. And I'm really curious to see the direction that the Jets go this offseason because it has just been it feels like a circus surrounding the quarterback in New York. And it's really unfortunate because, again, this was a team that, a lot of people had in the top 10. They were a powerhouse team. Their defense was shutting teams down. Breece Hall was running wild on them and making the offense look better than it was. And it's insane to me how much of a difference this offense looks minus a running back, because this is a position that a lot of people don't value. But Breece Hall goes down, and this is suddenly a completely different team as the New York Jets on offense. It's unbelievable night and day. Titans at 19. Another fall from grace team now, losing the division to the Jaguars. And at this point now, it's a win and you're in situation the rest of the way. It sounds like Ryan Tannehill's probably not playing anymore for the rest of the season, dealing with his injury. Is Malik Willis going to be the guy that leads this team to the playoffs? The defense is still pretty solid. It's just going to boil down to ultimately the quarterback position there. You still have Derrick Henry. You still have a really good offensive line. But right now, the playoffs are slipping away from you, and you're behind the Patriots now. And I can't even believe I'm saying that, because at one point I was so confident in the Titans winning the AFC South, and I think everyone was. I feel like at like midpoint of the season, week 8, 9, the term, or not the term, but just the phrase of the Titans are going to win the AFC South was being thrown around just nonchalantly. Like everyone was in on it, and everyone was seeing the future before their eyes right there. But now you have a Titans team that has fallen out of the playoffs, and at this point is kind of crashing and burning just because of injuries. And it's definitely time to figure out what you're going to do at the quarterback spot. I'm very curious to see, and with the firing of the GM prior, a few weeks prior, and this team is missing A.J. Brown for sure as he tears it up with the Eagles. Very curious to see what they do in the offseason, because this was not this team lacks a little bit of depth. You lose players to injury, that's a given, but it seems like no matter how good of a coach Mike Vrabel is, because I still believe he is one of the best coaches in the NFL, if you get to a point where you have so many players injured that your depth just can't really keep you afloat, you're going to need to find some more guys. So this is going to be a big offseason for the Titans if they want to continue to contend and be a dominant force in the AFC South, because it almost feels like we're kind of catching a power shift right now where the Jaguars are usurping the Titans and the Titans are kind of taking a step back now. Steelers at number 18 and the Buccaneers at number 17. The Steelers, Mike Tomlin be damned. He is going to make it to 500. That's what it feels like right now. Incredible that the Steelers are where they are right now with the carousel at quarterback that they've had this season because of injuries and just trying to figure out what they were going to do. But here the Steelers are fighting for a playoff spot still technically. If things go their way, they win a couple more games and some teams lose out, they could sneak in at 9-8. I mean, I've got to say, I was talking to my girlfriend's dad, he brought it up to me. He's like, can you believe Mike Tomlin is going to find his way to 500 again? He said never had a losing season, and it really feels like they're kind of working their way into that right now. Tall task against the Ravens coming up, and then I believe they play the Browns again. So it'll be a tough task to do so, but it feels like the Steelers are working their way into a potential season of 500 or better. Bucks at number 17, they got a big win over the Arizona Cardinals. Hats off to them in overtime against the Trace McSorley-led Cardinals. The Buccaneers are going to find their way into the playoffs. It feels like they'll probably be one of the worst divisional teams to represent a playoff team. 7-9, I think of the Seahawks, I believe, is the worst record that a team has had going into the playoffs, which that's insanity to me, but that is the case. I remember that happening. So 7-10 is probably the worst they could do if they want to win the division here, which would be crazy, a double-digit loss team in the playoffs, but I guess it's possible. They got to figure it out on offense. If this team wants to make a run, they have a really good defense, so there is that for them. Definitely, I would say the best of the worst half of the league, though, just considering a lot of inept offense when I look at the bottom half of the NFL. So you have a really good defense, and you still have Tom Brady at the very least, just some struggles here and there. If they can get healthier and maybe figure something out on offense, you have Tom Brady. When I look at every single team below the Buccaneers, they win at the quarterback spot to the other remaining 15 teams on the list so far. So they sit at the top of the bottom half of the NFL for me. Next four teams, we have the Patriots at number 16, Dolphins at 15, Lions at 14, and then the Commanders at number 13. So Patriots played the Bengals tight, moved their way up the board a little bit. Hats off to them. They still lost ultimately to that fumble, but you are still in control of your destiny for the playoffs. Patriots win out, and they do find themselves in as that number 7 seed in the AFC. The Dolphins at number 15, crashing and burning now. I believe they're on a 4-game losing streak now. Is that what it is? 4 or 5, something along those lines. And this is a team playing their way out of the playoffs at this point. If they lose to the Patriots this coming week, you need the Patriots to lose to the Bills the week following. And it's This is a tough situation for a Dolphins team that at one point everyone was thinking, okay, this is a team challenging for the AFC East here as well. The AFC East at the first half of the season, loaded, it felt like. Now it's kind of sorting itself out, and still a very competitive division, but teams are coming back down to earth. Tua is in concussion protocol now, and the people were pointing to a specific play with the video, and if Tua is concussed again, and he played through a half with that injury, and that's part of the reason why he just kind of, his play went to complete like poop, and he was just throwing interceptions left and right. The NFL has kind of failed him, and that's really unfortunate for a young guy who was looking really good this season. Already had one scary concussion, and then when I saw the play of the video of people sharing around on social media, and the way his head whacks off the ground there, if that is another situation where he had a concussion, that is just a complete failure on the NFL's part. They're supposed to have those concussion spotters. Seeing that play, looking like, because as a watcher, you're watching so many different things, or as a viewer, I guess you should say a viewer, you're watching so many things, and as a fan, there's so much going on. That's something I missed watching the live game, and going back and seeing that now, if my job is to just specifically spot people that look like they might be concussed or maybe have a situation where they smack their head really hard, that's exactly what I'm looking for. And if that is your job and you miss that, you need to reconsider your line of work. Lions at number 14, they drop a couple of spots for me on the power rankings here. As I spoke on with the Panthers, getting their doors completely blown off on the ground. They could not stop the running game. What was it, like 350 yards or something like that on the ground they allowed? A ludicrous number. This has been my big concern with the Lions. As much as I love the offense and the way they've been playing, and they've played some teams really, really closely, and honestly could have a few more wins if a few more balls bounce their way, that is my concern with the team right now, is the defense. Defenses do win championships at the end of the day, no matter how offensively driven the league is. You do need to have an explosive offense, but you need to have a defense that can stop the other team. And the Lions just kind of got rolled over against the Panthers' running game. And that was always my biggest concern with them, and hence why I was keeping them out of the top 10, despite having people shout at me in the comments that the Lions are a top 10 team right now. They are definitely a top half team in the league, and they're in contention for a playoff spot. Do not get me wrong, but that defense is something I just can't quite buy into at this moment. And then the Commanders at number 13, they don't move. They stay put where they are, although they could argue to probably be a little bit lower, but I had a handful of teams just kind of move around so much that I settled on the Commanders staying where they are, because they've had some really good wins. They've had some tough losses, and this game against the 49ers, while I want to drop them for the loss, they hung around in the game kind of, I don't even know if you could say they hung around or not. I'll leave that up to you to decide, but you go up against the 49ers team that is just so hot right now and so full of talent, and they're able to win in so many different ways. I don't want to knock them too much. You could argue they probably belong a spot or two lower, but then I look at the teams around them, and I think the other teams around them are kind of where they are. So I settled for them to be at number 13. I wouldn't die on a hill for them at number 13, but they're in a spot where they can still potentially find themselves in the playoffs. NFC is in a really tight race right now. There's a lot of teams, honestly, sitting in week number, going into 17, we're looking at only 8 teams eliminated from the playoffs, 4 from each conference. There are a lot of teams still technically in the running if things swing their way. So we're in a really competitive spot, but the Commanders are in a much better spot than a lot of teams right now. Next 4 teams, we are looking at the Packers at number 12, the Giants at 11, Jaguars at 10, and the Chargers at number 9. So the Packers at number 12, admittedly, might be a little bit high, but they're riding a 3-game win streak, and right now have a solid chance of finding their way into the playoffs. I think they're playing some solid football right now defensively, and on the offensive side of the ball, they're starting to really figure things out. It took them like 2/3 of the season to do so, but I do believe the Packers could find themselves into the playoffs. Giants at 11 are a team that feel like they're finding their way out of the playoffs right now, but we'll see what happens with them these next few weeks here. They had a really strong start to the season, so thankfully they have a handful more wins than some of the teams they're fighting for a playoff spot against. But this is a team that, again, dealing with a lot of injuries, just in kind of a tough way, trying to just hang on to like that number 6 or 7 seed in the NFC. They could definitely do it. There's definitely a shot and a chance. That win over the Commanders, what was it, last week, was massive for them. So We'll see how things shake out for the Giants. My confidence in them is very shaky right now, but they do still have a solid defense. So there is that for them and a very strong running game. So again, this is like a team that I don't really know what to make of them right now, but they're at least still in the running. And yeah, you lose to the Vikings, but you played them really tight. You lost on a 61-yard last-second field goal to lose the game. You can't really knock them too much for that. Jaguars at number 10. Division leaders in the AFC South, and they're fairly hot compared to a lot of teams in the NFL right now. Trevor Lawrence feels like he's really starting to figure it out, and like the NFL has kind of slowed down for him. The defense has been fairly effective the last few weeks as well. This is a team that's coming on strong. They're winning a lot of the right games at the right time, and despite the skid that they had earlier in the year, they do have some impressive wins. They have a massive victory and a blowout victory at that over the Chargers when they were still trying to figure themselves out. So this is a Jaguar team that I think can really take it to the best of them. It's just a matter of, where is this team, I guess, mentally at this point in the season? And it seems like they're in a really good place because they're just kind of going, like they feel like world beaters right now. They're just kind of on the prowl as Jaguars. No pun, I guess pun intended on that one, but this feels like a team that a lot of people not necessarily don't want to see per se, but could potentially underestimate them and fall victim to that. Chargers at number 9. You take care of business against the Colts. You win 20-3. That was exactly the type of win they needed. Hopefully Derwin James is okay. I know he was ejected for that massive hit that he had, but it sounded like he was in concussion protocol. But the Chargers at this point in the season, they're a team that has a good offense with a good quarterback, a defense that can be hit or miss depending on the week. I don't know, and I've said this already, but I'll say it again just to reiterate. I don't know if Brandon Staley is going to be the guy that leads this team to the promised land. I almost feel like it's going to take another coach to do so, but the Chargers are 9-6 right now. I do respect that, obviously. They're well into the running for the playoffs at this point in the season. They basically control their destiny. They just got to keep winning. Keep winning and you're good to go. But there is a piece of me that just cannot buy into the Chargers. I know they've locked in their playoff spot, but I don't want to say this because it's a little early to be saying stuff like this, but one and done just kind of is the feeling right now. I don't know. Hopefully I'm wrong with that because I really like the Chargers. I really do. But there's just a piece of me that, you win 20-3 against the Colts. You handled the offense really well. But I would have liked to see the Chargers win this game like 30-something-3. That just would have made me feel a little bit better about the team. But they have a great quarterback, great wide receiver duo, great running back, solid defense when they're playing really well. I guess we'll see with the Chargers. I believe in them. I have them at number 9. I just have some reservations about the coaching, I guess. My next 4 teams, we have the Ravens at number 8, Vikings at 7, Cowboys at 6, and the Chiefs at 5. These 4 teams are in the exact same place that they were last week. And the Chargers actually were as well. This extends all the way out to number 9. I did not move anyone here in this group before. I'm pretty happy with where they are. You could argue, obviously, the Cowboys. I understand they just beat them. I watched that entire game from start to finish. Don't get me wrong. A little bit concerned that Gardner Minshew was doing his thing. Obviously, he had some turnovers as well, but I really don't think that the Eagles should have been in that game as well as they were, considering their quarterback situation. Maybe Gardner Minshew is a little bit better than I'm giving him credit for, and the Eagles obviously have an absolute unit of a team from top to bottom. This is a very talented roster over there, but I really expected the Cowboys to win that game a little bit more handedly. I didn't think they were just going to completely dog walk the Eagles, but it almost feels like that game spoke more about the Eagles in their loss than it did about the Cowboys in their victory. So, I mean, I'm happy with where these 4 teams are, and you could argue maybe a spot or 2 for some of these teams, but Ravens at number 8, they're in the playoffs, 10-5. Vikings, maybe should be a little bit higher, but I'm still not really sold on the defense. I feel like a lot of people have that same concern, as do I. I understand their record, the 11 wins in 1 possession games. I get it. NFL record. Trust me, I get it. The team just has what is it, a +2? It's a +2 or a +5. I forget what the number is, but like a +2 or +5 point differential right now. I would feel better about the Vikings if that defense was just a little bit more consistent for me. Chiefs at number 5, I would say they are the best of this group of 4 right now, and you could argue maybe they belong a little bit higher. But the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, they have Andy Reid, they have a good defense, and, you know, whether you want to argue or not that this Chiefs offense is as explosive as it has been in years past minus Tyreek Hill, it feels like it's more versatile. The ball gets dished around a lot more, and I really like that about Kansas City. It takes away a little bit of the dimension, like the one-dimension feel, and it also just, you know, it leaves defenses guessing a little bit more, which is dangerous. Patrick Mahomes is really starting to come into his own at this point. Just when you think that, you know, he has reached like the pinnacle of quarterbacking, it feels like this season he's kind of taken it to another level. He is kind of my front runner for the MVP at this point. From start to finish, he has just been the most consistent quarterback, I would say, out of everyone. I don't really feel like he's had a really bad game. Like, he has had some not great games, but he hasn't really had that like signature bad game that I feel everyone else has had. He hasn't missed any time either. He has been here for start to finish. And it kind of feels like it's his award to lose right now. And then for my top 4 teams, also not a single change as well. We have the 49ers at number 4, the Bills at number 3, the Bengals at number 2, and the Eagles at number 1. Now, I will say this. There is a piece of me that wanted to move the Bengals a little bit lower. I feel like this near loss that they had to the Patriots was a little bit scary for me. I definitely expected them. When it was 22-0, I was like, okay, this game is pretty much going the way I expected. I thought that the Bengals are going to kind of walk all over the Patriots, but offense completely shut down in that game. Was a little bit worried about that. They still get the victory, though, and that's what you want to see from a team that has been playing as good as they are, but they're still in a really hot streak of wins, and, you know, not every win's going to be super pretty, and it's not going to be the win you expect them to get. So for the fact that they were able to punch out that football late in the game, get the fumble, and, you know, secure a victory there, hats off to them for being able to find the way to do that. The other 3 teams around them, the 49ers, they're about as hot as anybody else right now. The 49ers are arguably the hottest team in the NFL, I would say. It was the Eagles prior to them, but right now I would definitely say the 49ers are on fire. And my only reservation really is just, you know, we have Brock Purdy. He's 4-0. I'm just waiting for that game where it kind of unravels. Maybe it never happens. That would be awesome in best case scenario for the 49ers. It's just hard for me to take a team that is, don't get me wrong, talented everywhere. And Brock Purdy has played really well, just a little bit reserved at having a rookie quarterback who's only, 4 starts in now. Listen, I love the 49ers. I think they're really fun. And I know some people would say that I was doubting them earlier in the season. Brock Purdy has been the answer, at least for me, to start to really buy in. I just didn't believe in Jimmy Garoppolo. I feel like I've been saying that every single week since he's been hurt, but I really like the 49ers with Brock Purdy right now. I'm buying in. They could arguably be higher, definitely. Bills at number 3, doing their thing. Eagles at number 1. You could say, okay, maybe they deserve to be knocked off their pedestal, but like I said when I was talking about the Cowboys a minute ago, that loss spoke very loudly to me, more about the Eagles than it did about the Cowboys. This team is so talented from top to bottom that even with their backup quarterback in, you were within 1 possession and very close to potentially winning that game. If Jalen Hurts is in there, and I know this is doing the but, ifs, and ands and whatnot, I believe that if Jalen Hurts was in that game, we're probably looking at a different victor in that. No knock to the Cowboys, but you were missing a very big, versatile piece of the offense, and that's not the typical offense that the Eagles would be running if Jalen Hurts is in there. Hopefully he gets back and he's healthy for that playoff run that the Eagles are set to go on. But this is a team that if you can throw in your backup quarterback and still put up 34 points, albeit against, you know, slightly banged up secondary over there in Dallas, you have got to be impressed with what they're brewing over there in Philadelphia. I would say that they are the number 1 team in the NFL, and I'd love to hear your arguments if you don't think they are. But those are my power rankings for week number 17. I would love to hear what you all think in the comment section down below. Appreciate you guys for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.